Good morning and welcome to Life in Review. I'm Josefa Salinas, your host. Coffee. Oh, to some, it's the magic elixir that they have to have every morning. Other people say, oh no, don't drink coffee. It's horrible for you. When is enough with coffee? Or is 1 cup too much? Is coffee actually good for you? Well, Eric is with us this morning. He's a legally blind entrepreneur who is the founder and CEO of Brewed For You. We're discussing this morning why sales of packaged coffee have spiked during the pandemic and how the health benefits may tip the scales in the long-running controversy over caffeine. I personally am a fan of, I can only have 1 cup a day because caffeine kind of affects me, like revs me up a little bit too much. So it has to be like, after that, it's decaf. But I absolutely love my cup of coffee in the morning. So Eric, what is it that makes me love this coffee so much?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Josefa, for having me on your show. Great to be here. So I'll tell you, what organic coffee specifically has a lot of health benefits. And actually, organic coffee is expected to rise between the years of 2017 and 2025 due to the fact that it makes up approximately 1/3 of all the organic beverages that are out there. But as far as the health benefits of coffee, coffee definitely has the ability to reduce, various life-threatening diseases such as heart disease, type 2 diabetes, along with suicidal ideations as well.
Okay, so why do you think it is that coffee makes us, gives us comfort? Is it just the warmth of the beverage, the smell? Does it remind us of something from childhood? What is it that comforts us with a cup of coffee?
I really like to think of it in terms of wants and needs. And, everyone, needs a cup of coffee in the morning. It's really become more of kind of an expectation. People expect to have that. It's kind of like comfort food, right? When people always turn to specific comfort foods to make them feel better, well, same thing with coffee. When people wake up in the morning, they expect to have their cup of coffee in the morning to make them feel energized, revitalized, and to really get them going after waking up.
Now, I know coffee beans have a lot of antioxidants in them, and that helps the body fight free radicals. So talk to me a little bit about antioxidants and getting them from coffee.
Sure. So coffee has a lot of antioxidants, which obviously fights free radicals in the body. There are multiple places where you can acquire free radicals, and actually one of those places is actually being from sunlight, out in the open, and other places as well. But what's interesting about coffee is that coffee actually has more antioxidants than some fruits, and specifically more antioxidants than an apple.
When you're talking organic coffee, how do we know the difference when we're going and buying coffee, and what should we be looking for? Because some people are just like, oh, this is the store brand, it's cheaper, so I'm going to buy this. What is it that we want to look for when we're looking at coffee?
Yeah, so that's a good question. One of the things you really want to, or you need to understand about coffee is that with organic coffee, it's really more about the quality. So I know a lot of people buy for price. What's the cheapest coffee out there? Well, the problem with regular coffee or with all these doctored up coffees is it doesn't have a lot of the health benefits contained within. And that's because you have a lot of these sugars and syrups that are added into each cup of coffee, with your lattes and all these different coffee-based beverages. But with organic coffee, it doesn't have all the insecticides. It doesn't have all the added sugars, all the added syrups. It's just a regular straight black cup of coffee. For example, on my website, brewedforyou.com, I offer an Italian roasted French vanilla mocha. Okay. Now, the French vanilla is the actual extract from the plant. So there's no added sugars. There's no added syrups. It's 100% natural.
Wow, that's amazing. So I can get that vanilla latte feeling without adding the extra calories.
Absolutely.
So what other kinds of coffees do you offer on Brewed For You?
So the Italian roasted French vanilla mocha is actually the signature coffee. We offer a standard Latin American dark roast, which is, of course, just a straight black cup of coffee, very smooth, very robust. A breakfast blend. Of course, everyone has to have a breakfast blend, right? And then a hazelnut. And again, the flavoring when the hazelnut is 100% natural.
So you get it from an actual hazelnut?
What's interesting is that when it comes to flavors, you actually have to have special certifications to do this, but it's really a matter of blending certain oils together in order to create the actual or natural flavoring of the coffee.
Wow. So how did you go about learning this process, and what led you to wanting to be so involved in coffee?
Well, I'll tell you, I actually, I'm originally from the Chicago area, Chicago, Illinois, and I ended up
Midwestern guy.
starting, yep, exactly. But I actually started in vending a few years ago, and I worked in vending for about 3 years. And then, and one of the aspects of vending was dealing with coffee and figuring out what types of coffee, people liked, and obviously filling the machines, et cetera. When my life took me down here to South Florida, I wanted to get into the vending business again, and I kind of had an epiphany, which was, maybe I start my own company and really try to not only make an impact in people's lives by helping people who are disabled, one day seek employment at my company, but also, since I've always had a love of coffee, maybe that's what I should do, is start a coffee business.
Now, what process did you go through to start this? Did you start, investigating coffees? Did you have a certain brand that you were already familiar with that you liked? Or, what was the process that you used in determining what were going to be the best coffees for you?
So that's really due to my experience in the world of vending. And honestly, it was just based off of what the popular flavors that other people liked. For example, I originally wanted to offer a cinnamon flavored coffee on my website, but a lot of people, since cinnamon's very potent, not a lot of people like cinnamon, and I just went with a more standard hazelnut because that's what everyone prefers. However, when it comes to the Italian roasted French vanilla mocha, that is a particular coffee and flavor that I personally created.
Nice. Well, I can tell you that Mexican coffee has cinnamon in it. Café de olla is very, very popular. It's a very popular coffee out here in California for sure. And you might want to reconsider putting some cinnamon in coffee because it's definitely Café de olla is very, very popular. And I think you'll find that people will actually like it. Investigate a little bit, if you will. Café de olla.
Absolutely.
So what about something like an Italian sweet cream? How could you possibly, because that's my favorite, is Italian sweet cream in my coffee. Just a little bit. I only put a couple tablespoons, but I would love it if I didn't have to add that. How would you possibly make something like that? Or is it even possible?
That is a good question, and it is possible because that's exactly what I did with the Italian roasted French vanilla. As I mentioned earlier, you have to go through a whole process of blending certain oils together in order to make natural flavoring for your coffees. So a vanilla flavor was blended together with a natural mocha flavoring in order to make a naturally flavorful Italian roasted French vanilla mocha. And Italian is just a very dark roast, right? The two darkest roasts are an Italian roast and a French roast. So you have the smooth, dark roasted coffee combined with a hint of vanilla to form kind of the perfect vanilla flavored coffee.
Now, let's talk about difference in roasts, because I've never quite understood, except that I know that darker roasts are a little more flavorful. Am I right? And lighter roasts aren't. Talk to me about let's just educate the audience on the difference between a light roast and a dark roast coffee.
That's another good question, and I'll tell you. So a lot of people love a dark roast coffee. A lot of people say it has to be very smooth, very robust. Lighter roasts are just that. They're lighter, but I'll tell you what's interesting about coffee is that if you're drinking coffee specifically for the caffeine kick, there's kind of a fallacy here, and that's, some people think that the darker the bean or the darker the roast, the more caffeine it has. In fact, it's the other way around because, now we talk about mass, right? So we have a green coffee bean, it's roasted, for a specific duration of time, and then it, transforms into a medium roasted coffee bean and then a darker roasted coffee bean. So a lighter roasted coffee bean is actually, since it has more mass to it, it also contains more caffeine within. And the darker the bean is roasted, the less caffeine it has. So even though you're drinking a dark roast, it has less caffeine in the coffee bean itself versus a breakfast blend, which is a lighter roast, and that will contain more caffeine because the bean will ultimately have more mass.
Oh, you know what? I heard that. Somebody told me that. And I said, I'm going to wait and ask an expert because it almost seems the opposite. And I will bet you if we went into a coffee shop right now, unless it's like a real coffee aficionado, if you ask the average person coming in, they are actually going to believe that the darker the roast, the more caffeine it has.
Correct. And that's what a lot of people believe. And again, it even tastes like it, right? The darker the roast, it may taste a little sharper, a little smoother. But again, you're drinking it for the flavor and not necessarily for the amount of caffeine contained within that cup of coffee.
I enjoy coffee because I truly enjoy the flavor. And I have one of my best friends. She and I are what we call coffee snobs. We take our own coffee with us when we go like out, even on vacations. When we went to vacation, we took our coffee with us. We took our creamer with us because we knew they weren't going to have our creamer that we love. Now, if you were to like suggest to somebody like maybe who has we'll say they don't have such a taste for coffee, what would be a great starter coffee if you were going to be, introducing coffee to someone for the first time?
That's a good question. If I was going to be introducing someone to coffee for the first time, I would say, start off with a dark roast, a straight black cup of coffee, a real cup of coffee, not a latte, but an actual real cup of coffee. And then, if you like that, or depending on whether or not you like that, if you need to, you can always add milk. Not cream, but specifically milk into your coffee to kind of give it a lighter taste. But if you do like a straight black cup of coffee, I would definitely suggest then transitioning into a flavored coffee as well to see whether or not that suits your needs.
Can most coffees be used hot and cold? Like if I brew a pot of coffee and let's say I do a whole pot because I thought people were coming over and they're not. And so now I've got all this coffee left. Can I take that coffee and put it in the refrigerator and use it for iced coffee later? Is that possible? Or is there a certain way iced coffee has to be made?
Yes and no, and that's a good question. It's actually called cold brew coffee, and that's actually another trend that happens to be on the rise. And in cold brew coffee, there is a specific method to making coffee, cold brew coffee. In fact, on the back of our bags at brewedforyou.com, it actually gives you instructions on how to make your homemade cold brew coffee. So you can't really just make a hot pot of coffee and then stick it in the refrigerator. Unfortunately, you're going to have a very unpleasant aftertaste if you do that. So there is a very specific way to make cold brew.
Aha! So there is definitely a specific way to make cold brew. Okay, this is good to know. This is a great conversation because I'm learning so much about coffee that I didn't know. Let's talk about the coffees that say they're espresso. Like there's one that I really like that I have little packets of that I take with me when I go to restaurants because a lot of restaurants don't have good coffee. They just don't. And there's nothing worse than a bad cup of coffee, in my opinion, because I'm a coffee snob. So I have little packets of Cafe Bustelo. It's an espresso coffee. What's the difference when the coffee says it's an espresso coffee?
So an espresso coffee is usually used using high pressure to really squeeze out the coffee and really kind of get more of that caffeine in your cup of espresso coffee. But what's interesting about that is that from a nutritional standpoint is that when you have unfiltered coffee methods and filtered coffee methods. Obviously, your standard brewer has a filter, but certain coffee makers such as the French press and certain Turkish coffees, those are not made using a brewer that has a filtration system within. And because of that, you're actually getting more dihydropenes in that cup of coffee. And the reason why that's bad for you is because dihydropenes are known to raise LDL cholesterol levels, which is in fact bad. So you always want to have kind of a filtration system of some sort, whether it's a paper filter or other filtration systems in your coffee brewer or associated with your coffee brewer.
All in all, it sounds like coffee's not a bad thing. I would imagine if you use it in moderation. Now, people that drink 7, 8, 10 cups of coffee a day, that seems like that would be an awful lot of caffeine. So would you say that coffee, like anything, should be used in moderation? Because, I mean, if you drink anything too much of something could be bad for you. But it sounds like there's some really good effects to coffee if you use it properly.
Absolutely, and coffee actually has a numerous amount of health benefits. Coffee may reduce the risk of some cancers, specifically endometrial cancer. Coffee also may reduce the risk of heart disease. And what's interesting is that people who drink, 2 to 5 cups a day actually have a 20% reduced risk of heart disease or contracting heart disease.
Wow. How many cups a day?
It was actually 2 to 5 cups.
2 to 5. See, if I drank 2 cups of coffee, I would be up half the night. I have to have my coffee. It all has to be drank before 11 o'clock in the morning. But I'm usually up at between 4:30 and 5 every day anyway. So I have my coffee usually by 9, but for sure before 10. After 11, I can't have coffee because I will be up until, I just go, keep going into the night. Can't go to sleep because that's just how caffeine affects me. So I think you got to kind of look and see how caffeine affects you. But I tell you, there's nothing more comforting than getting that cup of coffee in the morning and sitting down when the house is still quiet and drinking my coffee. It is So amazing, and I love it. And thank you for teaching us so much about coffee today. Again, Eric, your website is brewedforyou.com, and I'm telling you, I'm going there today because I have some friends who love coffee and they love organic things. So now I'm going to go get them some coffee from your website because they will absolutely love it. Last question real quick. If I was keto, like doing a keto diet, would the flavored coffee still fit within keto?
Yes, I would say, again, if it's organic and if you're doing a diet, now again, keep in mind that if you're on several different types of diets, that could also have an adverse, impact on the body as well. So what you really want to do is stick to one specific diet. But as far as the health benefits go, yes, if you're really implementing coffee as part of your daily diet, and of course we're not talking about losing weight here. We're talking about acquiring as many health benefits as possible from the coffee. Yes, you definitely want to have at least 1 to 2 cups of coffee in the morning.
Yeah, I was just wondering because I know that like my friend who's doing a keto, he can't add creamers or anything, but he loves, like I love, Italian sweet cream. So that vanilla coffee
Correct.
Sounds like it would be great.
Right. And what's interesting is that, again, you have a lot of coffees that are just, conventional coffees. They're not organic, number one. And number two, a lot of people are going to naturally add their creams and their half and half into their coffee as well, which has, adds a lot of extra, carbs, and really it's just not good for you, because what you really want to do is just have a natural flavoring to the coffee, which is why, at Brewed For You, that's what we offer, 100% natural flavoring in the coffees, so you no longer have to put in your milk, your sugars, your creams, etc.
And do you have decaf and regular coffee?
Regular coffee.
Just regular coffee. Brewedforyou.com is the website. Eric, it would be my pleasure to support this and get some coffee. Plus, I just can't wait to get that vanilla coffee from you. And I encourage everybody, brewedforyou.com. Do you have information there about coffee where people can go and learn more of what we learned today about coffee?
Absolutely. You go to brewedforyou.com. You can watch the video on the website about me explaining, not just about the company, but also how I plan to help people with disabilities by giving them employment. And also you can look at the different types of coffee we offer. We have many different services, including a subscription service and a B2B program where we can actually serve to businesses as well.
Wonderful. Brewedforyou.com is the website. Eric, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you so much, Josefa. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Stick around. There's a whole lot more coming up right here.